Welcome. This is None for the Road, here with Matt Seymore. When I talked about doing these little one-offs with Dave and Will, you were one of the first person that came to mind. One, because of the hat. I'm like, we will get instant credibility just having the hat. I mean, we can see it on screen there. I mean, it's just...
Well, I need to give a shout out to my buddy Landon, who Lost
one
River
viewer
hats.
will really appreciate this.
Yeah, Lost River hats out of Phoenix, Arizona. He hand makes them. He's a cool guy. He makes killer hats, man.
I love it. Explain the process, because you were talking to me about it while you were doing it, and then to see the finished thing.
So you go to a studio. You pick. They're all felt. You pick the color, and then he's got all these like the ribbons and like the trinkets and stuff. They're all super old. They're from all over the world, and you just kind of pick the style and the vibe that you're going for.
So he has a bunch of like styles laid out. You're like,
no, it's
like, how did you come to that one? You're like, I think I want it high, but with butt cheeks in it.
So the color, I mean, I'm a sucker for like a green, but I love brass, and when brass turns and patinas and stuff like that. So I've got brass pieces on it, and then the green is kind of like a more of an aged brass look. So I knew going in that's what I wanted, and then you kind of give that to him, and he kind of runs with it. I just had this crown put in it yesterday. It was a full round crown for a year.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I've been going back and forth forever on whether to form the crown. And this is the type of crown that he wears, and he's a general contractor, and he wears his hat every single day. And every time I see him, I'm like, damn, I need to do that. So I had to make sure.
See, I'm very insecure about hats a little bit. Like, I can wear run of the mill, flat bill. I like that look, but like if I put that hat on, I'd look like an idiot.
You don't, though.
You
just have to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
that's with anything fashion. Just go do it.
You just have to do it. Sitting here, I'm like, I'd probably look like an idiot wearing this hat. But it's cool as hell, and who gives a shit?
But you've got the mustache, you've got the look, you've got the trade, you've got everything going, and I think you nailed it. You're just doing it.
You just have to.
We don't have a choice.
And that came from Landon. He's like, you're gonna feel like a fool wearing this. Just wear it.
And how many compliments a day do you get it?
I don't wear it that much, but when I do, yeah, people really dig it.
Dude, so, I mean, this is a podcast about three dudes talking about not drinking.
Yeah.
And you just came up on, I mean, your daughter was here the other night. It's like, my dad hasn't drunk. Somebody in Halloween gave us Jell-O shots. I just took it. I didn't drink it. I just took it because I'm like, I didn't want to get into the whole thing.
Yeah, right. It's a whole explanation.
So they're like, what is this? I'm like, it's alcohol mixed with Jell-O. I was like, oh. So Greta was like, my dad hasn't drank in 4 years. I'm like, I know, how awesome. So let's start there. Let's hear your story. Just who you are, what you do, and what brings you to today. Just who's Matt Seymore, and then we'll get into your 4 years sober, and then what I really want to get to is kind of the circumstances surrounding the moment of what led you to say no. Because I think in that moment and around those moments, I think it's so powerful because I'm already getting into it, but you have two, looking back, you can say there are two people converging in that moment. The one that we are, which is the drinking and what we derive from the booze or the substance, meeting, you can now look back on 4 years. You have 4 years of this Matt versus the old Matt. In that moment is the convergence of a transformative person, right? The old Matt about to meet new Matt. And there's that moment, and there's that deciding, there's that choice you made. And so I want to get into that.
Yeah, I mean, that moment, if you don't have that moment, then you're not going to, if drinking is a problem for you, if you don't have that moment, then you'll never stop drinking, right? So that moment is different for every single person, and you have to have it at some point. But yeah, I mean, I grew up on a dairy farm in upstate New York, where it was a super small town. There really wasn't much to do. Out here, the kids go to the desert and light bonfires, and we did that in the woods. They're called truck trails. they were seasonal trails for logging during the summer, and then in the winter they weren't used. But yeah, we'd go out there, light bonfires, and drink all night. And, but I started, like drinking when I was 14, and it wasn't like, I don't totally remember the first time I drank, but I remember feeling like this is the key, this is the answer. I've never felt like I fit in. We just had a whole conversation about self-esteem and hats and feeling weird and outcast, and that's how I always felt. So alcohol and drugs really made everything okay. It made everything okay, I was a blackout drinker from the jump, just always blacking out, and multiple times driving while blacked out and stuff like that through backwood roads, and nothing glorious. That's for damn sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You want me to tell like my whole story?
Yeah, why not? As much as you want.
All right. So again, I've just always struggled with addiction, with alcohol, with drugs. First, I turned 16 in my first rehab. I was court ordered because I, was drunk and did some stupid shit when I was 15. And then I turned 18 in my second rehab. And then that was kind of a wild one. That was a 6-month program, again, court ordered. It was after my first DUI, or in New York they call it DWI.
Yeah, well, I always try to figure that one. Driving with influence?
Wow.
Intoxicated.
Yeah.
So I got it. I'm just substituting the middle.
Right. That was kind of before they added all like the drug use into driving and stuff like that. So it was only while intoxicated. But so then at the end of like the inpatient rehab, you go to a halfway house, and I ended up in Syracuse, New York, which is a killer town. But I made a friend in rehab, and then we also ended up in the same halfway house. Ironically, his name was Benny Hill, which is kind of wild. But he had family in California, so like we left the halfway house, we moved in together, and it was just a matter of time before.
Did his parents not have cable until where they're like, you know what, our last name's Hill.
That wasn't his original name.
Oh, okay.
But then his mom remarried to a guy named Hill and adopted him.
Okay.
And so Benny Hill was born. But so we got on a Greyhound and took off to California. That was crazy. That was insane. It was like 4 days across the country with tons of random people doing drugs on a Greyhound. Is wild. And then we ended up sleeping on the beach in Oceanside that night. And then didn't really like that.
Was that your first time getting to the Pacific Ocean?
Yeah. Yeah,
kind of surreal, huh?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that was my first time in California, and it was super cool. I loved it. We slept on a beach of like an RV park.
Yeah.
Because we were gonna stay with his aunt, but his aunt's boyfriend was on parole, and Benny was on parole, so they couldn't hang out together. But nobody told us that, like while we're traveling 4 days across the country. And so she's like, "Well, here's a tent. You can." Camp on the beach, which is also, but we went, and I was 19 at the time, but we both got into this little bar in Oceanside, and then we ended up just kind of wandering around with this gigantic tent, and ended up just sleeping on a beach at an RV park. Didn't really like that. I had a cousin in Carlsbad, so I called her, and she came and picked us up. Partied with her for a few nights, and he had a cousin in San Francisco, so I called him, and on the Greyhound again to San Francisco, where things just got dark fast. Yeah. And it was, he lived on an apartment in Lower Haight Street, which is wild, and I ended up moving in. I ended up getting a job at a restaurant, became friends with the cook, and he lived in Oakland on Martin Luther King Jr. Way, which is a wild place to be in Oakland. And
why? I've never been there.
We
I've
were
been to Oakland. Never.
We were the only white people who lived on that street.
Okay.
Like there was a car wash across the street from the apartment that never washed a single car, but was packed all day long. Like it was just kind of stuff like, there's a liquor store down the street run by Middle Easterns. One night we went down there, and like at like 9:00 at night, they'd shut the security fence, and they would still take orders. And like one night there's a whole crowd of people like getting their orders and stuff. And then here come like 3 white dudes, and they opened the gate for us to let us go in. And we're like, no, dude, everybody's looking at us. But so that was a wild time. I got really, really deep and dark into drugs in Oakland, California. His, like the roommate that was like the main roommate.
Just keep talking.
Okay. His main income was LSD, so he sold acid for a living, basically, which is wild to think about. But so yeah, I mean, I got into a lot of drugs, and I had to get out of there. I didn't think I'd survive, and I was 20 at the time. So I went back home to New York, where things just got progressively worse. No matter where you go, there you are. And I started hanging out with, like-minded people again, but all new people from who I grew up with. And then I met, who's, obviously now my ex-wife. And we had a crazy relationship, lots of alcohol, lots of drugs. And then we split up, and she joined the Marine Corps, which I didn't know. And then after boot camp, she came home, and we saw each other. We started dating again, and got married like super secretly, like went to court because we wanted to stay together. And in order to stay together, her being in the Marines, we have to be married so she can live off base. So we did that. She got stationed in San Diego. I moved out to San Diego. It was a wild time. The alcohol never stopped. It was a dark period of my life, really. And then we split up, and then we decided to sober up and get back together, and we did. And that was like the first time that I'd ever put down drugs and alcohol without being court ordered. Without somebody telling me I had to.
Right.
And I started going to school. Our relationship got much better, obviously. Yeah, it's weird, right? And then like things were just good. And then we just kind of grew apart. Like she was in the Marines, and I just didn't understand her world. She didn't understand my world. We just kind of grew apart and very mutually got divorced. I got to say, like, she's an incredible person. She hasn't had a drop of alcohol in like 17 years. Married kids, super cool person. And then I moved to Irvine, and because I was working for Urban Outfitters.
Can I back you up before on a few different stops along your journey? You've mentioned it was a dark time. Oakland was dark. Dark. Can you?
Yeah.
Go into what does dark mean? Where were you? What?
So
we all have our own definition of it.
Yeah. So Oakland in particular. I know this is a sober podcast, and I don't know the kind of sober guys you've had on this, so it gets a little, what I like to say is dark. So I got smoking meth, which is insane. Like, you smoke meth, darkness just follows. It does. It's depressing. Your entire, the only way I can really explain it is your entire world is just dark. Like there's nothing good in your life. There's nothing
almost like
positive.
An oppressive weight that comes over you.
100%, and it's on you at all times.
And you can't get rid of it
right
until your next use, maybe?
No, it's not even that.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
No, it's just there. I mean, you go down to 27th Avenue in Indian School where my shop is, and, it's dark, dude. They're walking around like zombies. I mean, a lot of that's fentanyl now. And I loved smoking crack. Like, It was great. Like I heard Billy Strings on Theo Vaughn. Do you know who Billy Strings is? Incredible bluegrass player. He's taken bluegrass to where it's never. I mean, he sells out.
Oh, fun.
He sells out arenas, and he's a fucking bluegrass guy. Probably one of the most amazing guitar pickers that's ever existed, and he's like 20. But he was on Theo Vaughn they were talking about coke, and Theo's like, I never tried crack, and Billy's like, what? He's like, it's great, you know, in the moment, but it gets a hold of you, and it takes you for a ride. And so, yeah, like that's why I had to get out of Oakland. I really.
Did you lose anybody along the way?
No, because back then there was no fentanyl. Everybody who dies now is dying because they're snorting coke.
But even as a kid, I heard of drug overdoses.
For sure. But
But
that was really heroin.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're, nowadays people are like, even like business guys who like to go party and do coke every once in a while, they can't do it anymore because they're ODing because there's fentanyl.
Oh, okay.
So like, and that's another thing Theo Vaughn said the other day when he had JD Vance on. He was like, it's just sad that in America you can't do coke anymore. Like you can't because you're going to die. And so that's what I mean by dark. It's like this, there's nothing good. Like goodness doesn't exist in your world. It's just, you're laying on a mattress, it's dark in the room and you're sleeping when you can, and it's just gross, dude, and dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
in
then
the middle
mentally and
of it, let's say this lasted for 6 months. I'm just making up numbers. Yeah. In the middle of it, in month 3, I understand now you can say it's dark. What was it like when you're like, you made that comment, I had to get out of there? Like, was it you would come off a bender or come off a party or come off an outing and then be like, look around kind of in this sober state, still feeling the weight that you were describing, and you're like, I can't keep doing this, even though last night was fun up at that one point and then you come out of it. Explain a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I would say that's
about it.
That's spot on. Yeah, you're on a meth bender for days, and then you get some sleep and you wake up and it's like, what the fuck? You're in this dark room. No idea how long you've been. And we had one roommate who was a glass blower, and so we thought it was super cool that we could blow our own meth pipes, and like stupid shit like that.
Of course.
But it was just, and he was the main Grateful Dead people, and so there's people in and out. Like the guy who made the acid, the chemist would come and stay to get some sleep, basically. It was just, the people coming in and out were just, I don't know, just like lifeless sacks of meat, you know what I mean? It was just, there was no joy in them, and that's, I think, where it just really emotionally, mentally, spiritually sucks everything out of you, man. It's just, it's just dark. It's just not.
What were your relationships like in those moments? What were like your friend, the group you went with, the friends that you had that you felt like you could trust? Were they all kind of feeling? Do they feel the same thing? And do you guys just not talk about it?
I don't think so. But probably we never talked about it. No, you don't talk about that shit. I don't know. We had a lot of good times. A lot of good times. Yeah. There was a period of time when we had a ton of ketamine in the house, and that was a really fun time for like a month. But you look back on that now, and it's like, fuck, dude, did so much ketamine. Like, how do I still walk and talk? Like, now they use it for therapy, and I'm like, dude, I love that shit. But yeah, I mean, I did so much acid and ketamine, crack and meth in Oakland. It was just like, that's what my whole world revolved around. And that's another thing that leads into that darkness. Like, your entire world revolves around how are we getting high today?
Right.
Which is not a great way to live.
Yeah, but when you're in the middle of it, I can imagine it's like, I mean, that's the mission of the day.
So much fun. Yeah.
Like, let's go, boy. Last night was fun.
Absolutely.
We all woke up. That's where the friendships, at least you're in it together, right? I'm not promoting this by any means.
Yeah, right.
But in those moments, you're at least all in it together.
Totally.
You're like, okay, now mission oriented. Now it's now Tuesday night. Let's go out
Yep.
and reap our, harvest,
Absolutely.
get the bounty, and let's do this again.
Yep.
And I can see how that would wear you out, though.
Oh yeah.
A month, two. I mean, a party is great. A weekend bender in Vegas is always fun.
Right.
You can't do. Well, some people do, but to do that for 10 straight days,
Yeah.
a month, it wears you out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're always kind of looking around. You know what I mean? Not just looking around for drugs and stuff, but like you're paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just gross, dude.
Yeah.
Just gross.
All right. So I
No.
cut you off, and you were going good, but I really wanted to get into a little bit more of that. I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, we can get into it later, but I would say like that wasn't even the darkest time of my life when it comes to, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I was working for Urban Outfitters in San Diego. In Urban Outfitters, San Diego, every Urban Outfitters has a display artist position. There's like a wood shop in the back of the store where you make all the shit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
pretty
that's cool.
Yeah. And so I got,
Apply to her.
yeah, they don't pay. So I got the position in Irvine and went up there, and that's where I met Dana. And then she got promoted, and I was actually still sober from being, sober with my ex-wife.
How long was that duration?
A year and a half, maybe.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Good little stint.
Yeah.
Then I went to Irvine, and
That's more than let me just try this out.
Totally.
That's at least an attempt at a lifestyle change.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that was the goal when, we had gotten back together. It's like, it can't just be a couple of weeks. It has to be a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And then I'd started drinking again, obviously. And so we're living in Irvine. She gets promoted to the Urban Outfitters in Mandalay Bay. So we moved to Vegas, and that's where Wyatt's born. And which is wild. He's going to be 18 in 2 weeks.
That's what Greta was saying walking to the football game last night.
Insane. We're going to San Diego to see the Red Clay Strays, just the two of us. It's going to be sick. And he's getting a tattoo.
What's it of?
He wants a crown of thorns around his forearm, and I'm like, it's gonna look like a tribal barbed wire. You can't. We got to figure something else out. He wants like 3 crosses and scripture quote, but yeah. So
Does he have a favorite scripture?
Yeah, I forget what he said it was, but yeah. So we moved to Vegas, and then like I was working full time. Dana was working full time for Urban Outfitters, and Wyatt was in daycare every day, and so he ended up with like a dozen ear infections.
Oh, really?
Before he was 1, because daycare, and he had to have tubes put in his ears, and so we decided we don't want to do this anymore.
I'm wondering, what's that white thing?
And so we decided we didn't want to do that anymore. So we moved back to my hometown in New York, to where I quickly started hanging out with the same people that I used to hang out with. And Dana came back here to visit because she grew up here. And so I just went nuts, spent all the money on coke, and then learned how to cook coke into crack. And then it was over, man. So then we were in New York a year to the date. Labor Day.
What is the difference between coke? Like, how do you go coke into crack, and what's the benefit?
So crack
what's the difference?
is coke kind of boiled down to its purest form. So you take a hit of crack, and they call it, it's like a bell ringer. It's like somebody just smacks you over the head. It's the biggest high you'll ever get.
Okay.
And then that's what you chase over and over and over, and you never get it again. So
You never get the first time over? Ever? Really?
Yeah, no. If you take, if you smoke crack for one night and then next weekend you do it again, yeah, you get super high that first hit, but like you spend the entire rest of the night and into the next morning usually
going back after
trying to get that, and you never get it. It's kind of sad, but that first one kicks your ass, and it's the biggest best high I've ever had in my life, and that's why You just keep trying to get it. You just keep trying to chase it. So yeah, we moved to New York on Labor Day, and we left New York on Labor Day a year later. It was also 2008, so everything collapsed. My hometown, like I graduated with like 50 other people, so tiny town, and when the economy busted, I mean, my town was dead. You could either be a farmer or pretty much that's it. And I did grow up on a dairy farm. I just didn't want to be a farmer. And so we moved here because this is where Dana grew up, and the drinking continued. I'd had stints of being sober here and there. And then, yeah, there's a whole long story, bunch of stories in there. But the last 2 years of my drinking was wild. So I was working for a company, and I'd started drinking. I was sober when I got hired at the company and started drinking, towards halfway, maybe something like that. And I was doing really shady shit, man. I was going to a bar and putting it on the company tab, and then you could, at the end of the week, all your receipts are printed out, and you can, if you didn't have a receipt, because I'd go to the bar and throw the receipt out. So they would print out the credit card report, and you would say like, oh yeah, that was me, deduct that from my pay. So like I was still paying for it, but I was doing it in a really, really shady way. So I got fired from that job, but not for that reason, which was really bizarre. He thought I was stealing clients from him, which I wasn't. And I like admitted to him, I was like, I'm an alcoholic. I have a problem. And he's like, I don't even care about that. He's like, what I care about is the clients you're stealing. And I was like, wait, what?
What?
And I actually had coffee with him after getting sober, and he didn't even remember why he fired me. And then his life fell apart.
We only see the world through our lens. You don't know what he was going through.
Totally.
And you're like, yeah. After the fact, he doesn't remember why he fired you. His life fell apart. You just said you have no clue what he was going through.
Right. Yep.
But yet, man, we don't offer people and their story in the day that we run into them enough grace and enough. Man, maybe they're not having such a great day. It just doesn't cross our mind enough.
Yep.
To think of other people because we're just so focused on us and our moment. And
that's
side note, but sorry.
Well, side note, but that's also like an alcoholic in a nutshell is selfishness. Like that's all we care about. That's our main focus in life is me. So then I got fired from that job, and that was like, 11 a.m. beers. They were justifiable. It's lunchtime. And I started my own company.
Why'd you start doing lunches earlier? Got hungry early.
10 o'clock's lunch, right? And so that got, the 11 o'clock justified beer got earlier and earlier, 8 o'clock. And then one Saturday I was super hungover. And so I went to a Circle K, and they had these it's called spiked cold brew. And it was like this little tiny can, like a Red Bull kind of. And it was like 14% alcohol. It was cold brew with bourbon in it. And I got one of those and cured my hangover. And from that day on, for another year and a half, 6 a.m. until passing out, I was drinking. And that was brutal. It was hard on everything, on my spirit, on my emotions, on my body. I'd sleep like 3 hours a night. And then shake in the morning.
I think that gets me more than anything because I have to have 8 hours. I can go one night with 4 and be fine. I've always needed it. So the lack of sleep when people are like, I got 3 hours last night. I can't operate. I cannot operate.
Right.
So anyway.
Well, you wake up because your body's going through withdrawals and you can't do anything about it. And I never got to the point where I was hiding like bottles of vodka in the house to drink during the night. And then I'd get up and I'd throw up because my body is just rejecting everything. I'd have a sip of water and have to go throw up, and I'd have to do it. I'd do it really quietly because I'd be the first one up. And I hid my alcoholism. Nobody knew. I mean, nobody knew, except one friend who I talked to about it.
Nobody could smell it. Like, cause I always thought, oh man, nobody knows I'm drinking. I sat next to my brother at the football game last night, and I'm like, oh, it's such a smell that you can.
Yeah, but you come up with processes, right? And so I would be drinking all day, and I'd get home around 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon from work, driving all day drinking, because that's what I did. I drove around all day, and so you come home, you've been drinking for 8-10 hours, but the very first thing you do is open a beer and take a big old swig, and then you walk in the house with a beer in your hand, and that's why you smell like beer. So you come up with all these little things that you can do to kind of hide it, and then nobody knows any better that you've only been drinking from 4 p.m.
I even found that was stressful.
Oh, it's incredibly stressful.
Like, new people are coming over. I'm like, how to hide it, being paranoid. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd have like people over on a Friday or Saturday, and I'd been drinking for 12, 13 hours, and then people come over and they want to continue to drink, and I'm at the kitchen table like shit-faced. Falling asleep was typically my thing. But
and you could just say, I'm tired?
Yeah. There was a friend of ours, you know Jordan and Taylor,
mm-hmm.
and there was one night they were over, and we were drinking and listening to country music, and Tyler Childers came on. And Taylor said something that they love, or Jordan, I don't know, but the both of them love Tyler Childers. And I was like, you guys like this? And Taylor was like, if you weren't drunk all the time, you'd remember this conversation. And I was like, she found me out, man. Like, she knows. And I didn't take offense to it or anything, because it was like 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Because we'd talked about it numerous times probably, but I didn't remember a single thing. And so that's stressful, right?
Yeah.
Because you meet these people and you've probably had these conversations 100 times. And but yeah.
I remember there's times when I even changed the way I would talk to people. Like, I think I told you this, but right, that you start every conversation. Right. Oh man, I think I told you this, but I mean, I just wanted to retell it, or you come up with different ways to
maybe we've had this conversation
your memory
before.
loss. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
it's just out of shame and guilt, or something. I mean,
100% shame and guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so it was drinking 6 a.m. until the moment I went to bed. And my friend Dustin, who's a super close friend of mine, we met because we had the same paint manufacturer rep, mm-hmm. and we both had beards and mustaches. And well, actually, back then we just had.
Did we just become best friends?
It was.
So, bro.
100% like that.
That's awesome.
And our rep was like, "You guys need to meet because I think you'd really like each other." We went out for coffee and just talked business and stuff. But yeah, we were super super close ever since. And now he's the one I work for. But he was the one who knew exactly the extent of my alcohol consumption. And so this one night I'm sitting at, and this is my moment, right? This is the moment, the rock bottom that we talked about at the beginning. I'm sitting at this table, at the kitchen table that I made. It's concrete and mesquite.
It's incredible, yeah.
And it's beautiful. And I'm sitting there like a piece of shit loser, been drinking all day, and I just start crying, dude, to myself because I don't want anybody else to hear me.
Yeah.
I'm texting with Dustin, like, I just can't do this anymore. And so he's like, you can do this. And he drinks a lot too. He was probably drunk as hell telling me, you can do this, man.
Bro.
Yeah. And so the next morning he talked me through it. So at the end of my street is a Circle K. And so you stop at the stoplight and then you pull into the Circle K. This was my routine, 6 a.m. because that's when the lockers open. You pull into the Circle K and then I go about my business. But he that morning talked me through taking a right and getting on the 51 instead of stopping in the Circle K. And I've never had another drink.
How hard was that? Like, did you sit at that light for a minute?
It was.
Or did you just say, I'm jumping off the cliff, I'm gonna just.
Yeah, it was like pulling a Band-Aid off, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you have to do. But that was another thing. Like, I'd be driving around bawling, dude. Like, just an absolute disaster of emotion. Listening to Jason Isbell when drinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
During this
drunk as
process,
shit
yeah,
at
okay.
1 in the afternoon, drunk as hell. You know, I had a whole routine, dude. You know, I'd drink those spiked cold brews. At first it was 1, then it was 2, then it was 6. And again, those are 14%. So that was a lot of alcohol. And then I would switch to like White Claws because that's a proper brunch, you know?
Absolutely.
It's like a
clear,
it's like
got
a
some
mimosa.
bubbles,
Yeah, totally. And then I'd go to
They're so good. They're refreshing. They're clean. They're light. It's not like drinking 10 beers.
Yeah.
That's heavy. And
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day about mimosas. Like, I'll drink 5 bottles of champagne if it's a mimosa. Like, I have no issues with that at all, dude. Like, uncork another, man.
Yeah.
Go buy some more orange juice. Let's get these down.
Yeah.
And you could go to Oso and get like penny mimosas during their brunch. But yeah, I'd be listening to Jason Isbell driving around, just bawling, dude, just tortured, really, by Malcolm. But yeah, so I took that right. I got on to 51. That night, I think I slept 12 hours straight. Like, it was, and I don't think I've ever had the thought of drinking again in 4 years, which is different. You know what I mean? That's not everybody's story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think God took that morning, took that from me. I've never, ever had the thought of going, like, even when horrible shit happens, it's not my first thought. I deal more, so what came of that is all the emotional shit. You know, I've been doing this since 14 and I'll be 44. So like a long time. And so it's all the stuff that I've been numbing for that amount of time. Now I have to feel and experience. And even when I was sober for a bit with my ex-wife, you know, that was a bit, but I didn't change. I didn't do anything different. And then I was sober for a bit with Dana. We were, like, I had gotten deep into the church. That's when I'd first become a Christian. And like, that kind of kept me sober. But even that turned out to be real weird. But I'd never really changed. And so this time around, AA saved my life 100%. I don't know if I could have continued on. You know, I say God removed that obsession of drinking, but if I had not gone to AA and met the people that I met, I don't know if I'd still be here.
Yeah. Well, my hat, you were talking about that thinking it was something else, but one of the motto of this group of men at my church is a community of men. It starts out with that. I think a community of people is so important. I think that's what you have with AA.
Yep.
People that are like-minded with a good purpose and a good cause.
Yeah.
That come around you and you come around them and help each other out. We cannot live alone.
Absolutely.
That's where alcohol, drugs, it's so isolating.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets you.
Yep.
I think, you know, if you're a spiritual person, this might resonate. If not, insert your own thing, but I think the enemy, the devil, wants us isolated.
100%.
He can do evil can have its way with us when we are isolated and we're by ourselves and we are left to our own thoughts and our own devices. We will self-destruct.
Absolutely.
And so having that community, and you have that community of men around you, I think that is it's crucial to life, not just with people that struggled with drinking or drugs or any of that. It's just crucial to life.
Absolutely.
To have that in all facets, whether you know it's spiritual related, drinking related. I don't know. Those are the things that.
Yeah, I don't think we're meant to be alone. I think Jordan Peterson talks about how civilizations were built around really religion, like Christian, whether it's Christianity or whatever religion. Take whatever religion, but civilizations are built around that, and civilizations that don't have that crumble. Like look at any communist regime; most of them are atheists, and they tend to crumble. But yeah, we're not. I don't think we're meant to be alone. And I haven't, to be honest, I haven't gone to AA in a very long time. We started a new group on Monday nights, and it's just a couple of us who are super close, really just talking about our week, which is something I really need. But like, you're in AA for a while. I've seen a lot of people die, man. It sucks.
In AA?
Yeah, they go out once and that's it. So it's kind of... my good friend John, he was sober like 2 years when I first came in, and he was obnoxious, and I fucking loved him. You know, everybody either hated him or loved him, and me and my friends, we loved him. And really struggled, refused to go to like therapy. And that's a thing in AA, you know, being on meds or anything like that. But he struggled real hard. He went out and couldn't escape the guilt and shame. He loved smoking meth. That was his thing. And just could not escape it. And then came back to our Sunday morning meeting looking like shit, just awful. And you could tell he was just full of guilt and shame. And then you get the phone call. He's found dead in a motel. He smoked he smoked fentanyl. He hated fentanyl, but he knew it would kill him. So yeah.
What was the guilt and shame
Of going back out and getting loaded after being
so there wasn't guilt and
AA.
shame when he was sober in AA. He wasn't feeling guilt and shame for his past life. That wasn't his.
I mean, the easy answer is no to what you're getting at. Like, no, that's not what. Yeah. So he went out, smoked a bunch of meth with a hook, and then came back to AA, and that you could see it in his face. He just hated himself and felt guilty for even being there and stuff like that. But I think he really struggled with his past. Yeah. And probably should have went through therapy, but didn't. So like I'm on antidepressants, and that's kind of looked down on in AA because you're not.
Really?
So I've had multiple people, like when I was thinking about getting on them, because I've struggled with depression since I was 15. It's just always something, and it's like, well, maybe you just need to pray more, maybe you just need to meditate more, and I hate that shit. It's like maybe my brain's just fucked up, like maybe my brain's just not wired correctly. Because that's a thing, and maybe that's what does it. And when I quit drinking, you know, that night at the table, my thing was either I'm going to quit drinking or I'm going to eat a bullet. Those are my two options. And that's, you know, when I was driving around sobbing, listening to sad country music, that was my thing. Like, I just need to end it because I can't do this anymore. But yeah.
What has 4 years been like?
4 years has been an advent. I mean, a journey, like you said. I was a year in and wanted to kill myself, and it's like, why am I a year sober and still want to kill myself? So I went back through the steps of AA with a different sponsor, as AA calls it. A sponsor is somebody who's been through all the steps, and it is really just a guide for your sobriety. Like it's super important. It's kind of like a pastor, but don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, a year through, I went back through the steps. When we were a part of that church, it really messed me up bad. It ended up being a really kind of twisted, gross church. The pastor is now a therapist, which is just scary.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. And then we went to another church, and it was kind of like the same. I don't know. It was bizarre. So I've struggled with Christianity ever since my dad died, really. You know, my dad died, and a lot of people, their first question was he a believer? It's like, fuck you. He was a great guy. Yeah. Like, I can't believe that's your first question. So I've kind of struggled with the church ever since. But I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, so I'm a year sober, still quite suicidal. And then I go back through the steps and I get a lot better. But then it comes back, and it's like I've struggled with this since I was a kid. Like,
what comes back?
Depression.
Okay.
Thinking like everything would just be easier for everybody involved if I were gone. You know, that's kind of like the daily thought.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine who's been sober for 15, 17 years, great guy, huge AA guy. Sober 17, 15 years, still goes to AA meetings every single day.
Every day.
Every single day. It saved his life. He helps other people. He helps tons of people.
I love that because our pastor, similar scenario.
He's friends with him too.
Okay, he's like, first time going to AA. He walks out. Guy comes up. He's like, "We'll see you tomorrow." He's like, "Tomorrow? What do you mean?" He's like, How many days in a row do you drink? He's like, every day. He's like, well, then you need AA that many days. Something, I'm butchering it, but something like that.
It's probably the same guy I'm talking
funny.
about. I guarantee that. And that's the kind of person he is. But he was like, he's on meds for different shit. And he's like, thinking about killing yourself is not a part of recovery. And that was the first time I'd heard somebody in AA say that without condemnation or anything like that. So I started going to a psychiatrist and got on meds, and I've been much, much better. I never think about suicide anymore, but that doesn't mean that depression isn't like real still. And I think this is an important thing to talk about, especially for men. Because,
sorry, just real quick. It saddens me that in a recovery program, there's condemnation. We as humans can't help, but we get one rung up, and man, we're quick to condemn people.
But I think in everything there's condemnation.
I agree. I'm not just talking about that.
Yeah, it sucks.
In life,
right? Totally.
We get one rung up the money ladder, and we look back to, it's a shame on us as humans.
I remember. I'll never forget this. This is one of the times when I really started taking a step back from the church we were at. And we were like leaders in the church. We were holding Bible studies, doing all this stuff. And when we left, it was kind of a big deal. But we were at a men's retreat, and I had been sober or not drinking for a year and a half, 2 years. I think 2 years. And, people are getting up and talking about struggles and stuff. And this one guy gets up and talks about how he can't stop drinking and all this stuff. And I had just gotten up or after that I got up and, said that I'd been sober, not drinking for 2 years and stuff like that. And so the dude who has a drinking problem was standing with the pastor afterwards, and everybody's like, you should really go talk to him. You guys could probably help him a lot. And so I go up to him and I was like, hey dude, if you ever want to talk about drinking, like I haven't done it in 2 years, you heard that, and maybe we could help each other. And my pastor was like, he's not an alcoholic like you are. He drinks on Sundays watching football. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, wow, all right, cool. And so that was when I really started to like, I don't know if I like these people. Like if you like, to me that was you're dirty. He's not dirty. But anyway, I forget how I got on that.
Well, I sidetracked you.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to go back, just talking about the human condition where we condemn people. What you were talking about was
depression and meds,
and you said that it's important to talk about this.
Yeah, especially for men. Especially nowadays in this society, nobody gives a shit about what men think or feel. And so, like 2 months ago is like Men's Health Awareness Month or whatever, but no one gives a shit.
You didn't walk around our neighborhood?
No, but there's this one woman who's a painter in North Carolina, and my Instagram is all painters. That's all it is. And she shared that her dad killed himself, and she was like, it's Men's Health Awareness Month, and I just want to talk about how like men go through so much and shoulder so much, and nobody ever talks about it or even cares about it. And I was like, man, that meant a lot. Like, but it's shit like that. And so, yeah, I'm on meds, and it's helped a lot. But then I'm 4 years sober, removed from 30 years of drinking, is still like my brain is still like 17-year-old. You know what I mean? And so like once you start drinking, you really stop growing. And so it's all that.
It explains a lot, man. I got to write some of this down. Not about you, about me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It explains a lot about me too. But you start thinking about the past and the future, and you know, you start doing jujitsu and you start doing all sorts of stuff to try and I started learning guitar, and I don't know, you do stuff to kind of not necessarily, like maybe you don't buy a sports car in a midlife crisis, you start doing jujitsu. I don't know, but yeah, you asked a while back, like, who is Matt now or something like that, and I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm figuring it out.
Do you have a process that you're going through to try to figure it out, or you just kind of blank canvas, like, just let me start painting a little bit today, or ask this question, this question, but no real...
I think as far as like spirituality goes and stuff like that, I think it's always good to seek and to ask questions and to look around. And so I try to read, a lot, as often as I can. Right now I'm reading a book about jiu-jitsu, but I think you read, you talk to people, you take bits and pieces from everybody you meet, right? And from everybody you talk to. And does that work for me? Does that not work for me? And I don't know, man. It's, right now I know that I'm a provider for my family. I know that the stuff I'm doing for work is creative and I love it. But other than that, I don't know. And which isn't very uplifting and positive. But I think as a midlife man, 44, like, life's just not always easy. I don't know. And I also look at my kids, right? Like, Dana and I sacrifice everything for the kids, and which you should, right?
Yeah.
A buddy of mine asked me, if you had dinner with yourself, if you from 10 years from now had dinner with yourself today, what would you tell him? And I think one of the big things is, like, you spent all your money on your kids and it was worth it. You know what I mean? But I look at my son, everybody who meets him tells me that he's super respectful. He's just a great guy. And he is. He's a really good dude. He talks to me about literally everything. And because I talk to him about everything, like, the young kid that died of fentanyl, he met him. And so I was able to have a conversation with him, like, it's no freaking joke out there. Like, you want to drink, you want to smoke weed, but no pills, no powder, because it ain't what it used to be.
Yeah.
And then Elliot, my 15-year-old, had like an English assignment, and she wanted us to proofread it, and it talked about how, like, I'm the best dad ever, and I work so hard to give them everything. It's like, shit. That's awesome. But yeah, I mean, I know that men need other men around them. And I talk to guys all day long, and they're all sober. And they're some of my closest friends, from San Diego to Texas to here, but yeah. I think depression is a big thing for men, and it's not talked about enough. But it's all encompassing. Oftentimes, depression takes over.
How do you see that? How have you seen that play out in your life and with your friends?
Depression?
Yeah.
For me, myself, like, I retreat. I don't have much to say, and then I'm in my head, and I'm talking all the shit about me, to me.
Yep.
About how worthless I am and how I don't matter, and
it's that condemnation,
stuff.
man.
Yeah, totally.
We're good at doing it to others, and we are really good at doing it to ourselves.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's based in truth.
Right.
There's always a sliver of truth in there. So how could it not be true for me to condemn myself? Because I did just fail at that.
Right.
And then vicious.
Yeah. There's a funny meme I love. It's a dude standing, like, his back hurts, and it's like, of course your back hurts, you lousy piece of shit. It's like, I love it, dude. It's so funny, but it's like, man, it's how I feel all the time. You deserve it, you asshole. Oh man, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a big deal that doesn't get talked about enough.
What would you say to somebody who wants to quit drinking and doesn't know how, is scared, is what?
My recommendation is always going to be AA. It just is, because it worked for me. I tried all the things, man. I tried not drinking and only smoking weed. I tried not drinking and keeping myself busy doing other stuff, like my kitchen table. So I really went all in on that, and then started drinking, and it sat in my garage for like 9 months unfinished. It saved my life, and so that's always going to be my recommendation. You go there and put the work in. Like, if you just go there and you don't talk to anybody, no, it's not going to work, and you're probably going to feel shitty. You're going to equate that to AA now, like, it didn't work for me, blah blah blah. But if you go there, if you talk to people, and it's humbling, and that's another reason why we introduce ourselves as alcoholics, because somebody new comes in, they're super nervous, they've got less than a day sober, right, and they don't really know if they're an alcoholic. They don't really want to admit that they're an alcoholic. And I'm like, hey, I'm Matt, I'm an alcoholic. And kind of makes you feel
more
more at ease.
Being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it sets
yeah,
people at peace a little bit, you know, like, okay, this dude is calling himself an alcoholic. Maybe he can relate with me. And we tell, like,
that's right. And so 17 years sober versus 1 day sober, there's no difference. We're all
totally.
I love that.
I'm sober today, and so are you. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. I mean, with time comes wisdom, but the only thing that separates us sobriety-wise is I'm sober today, and so are you.
Yeah.
That's it. But yeah, I would always recommend AA.
How do you get somebody to take the step, whether it's AA or whatever the change is, to not drink today, to turn right at the light versus turn left to go to Circle K?
Yeah.
How would you encourage people to at least get in the car to go to AA or to turn right? Like, that's the when I asked you about the moment, like, there's a moment, like, can you fabricate a moment and help somebody come along? Like,
no.
What?
No, if somebody doesn't have that moment or have that rock bottom, no, there's nothing you can do. You have to want it. If I didn't want to get sober, I desperately needed it. Like I said, it was sobriety or a bullet. That's it.
Yeah.
Or I kid about this. It's a kind of a dark joke, but headed northbound on the 51, the exit of Northern has all those concrete barriers. And, and daily I'd drive by and be like, oh, that would take me out quick. You have to have that moment. If you don't, you have to have that moment. You can't fabricate a rock bottom because it's fake. You have to want it. I was desperate for it. And you have to be desperate.
I think that's what alcohol's good at, is helping you to run a course. And to run aground, and to it does. I mean, if it doesn't get you, if it doesn't kill you, it at least helps you get closer to wanting it.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing that there is no pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. There is. No. You chase it, and you're really chasing it for that moment. You talked about it with crack, right? You're like, I want that again.
Right.
With alcohol, for me, I mean, you could always have a fun party time.
For sure.
You're always feeling good. You're light. I always felt freer. My jokes were funnier.
Yeah.
Whatever that was, right?
Yeah.
But you do that long enough, and you realize things start to go downhill outside of you.
Yeah.
Right? The world starts to crumble around you. Your island is still strong.
Totally.
You're there, but things start to crumble, and you're like, and you start to affect the people around you, and then it'll run you aground and be like, okay, I don't want this anymore. And that's where I loved what you said. You have to want it. Yeah. It's a very simple statement.
Absolutely.
You have to want it. You have to want something bigger and better than where you're at that one moment. And that moment is different for everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. I mean, some people it's getting a DUI and going to prison.
Yeah.
Some people it's killing somebody. Some people it's, losing a business and crumbling financially. For me, it was just, I was so tired. I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't hang on anymore, man. I was so freaking tired. I didn't know it, but after I quit drinking, Dana said that my eyes were yellow. So, like, after a few weeks of not drinking, my eyes got white again. The last family picture we took, my face is swollen. Looks like I just had dental surgery or something. But I was physically a mess. But But yeah, nobody knew.
So the cool thing about doing video or doing a podcast, if it's audio, is, I mean, we'll have this for 10, 20, 30, 40
Yeah,
years.
right.
So
Yeah.
looking back in 5, 10 years, you'll have this moment. You'll be able to look back in 5 years and say, oh, wow, I was going through that depression, or I was struggling with this or that. What are you hoping for the next 4 years? Let's go, not 5 years, 4 years. You're 4 years sober. What are there hopes? Are there things that you're looking on the horizon? Or are you staying in just today?
Yeah, I mean, I've got plans for sure. We started the new company, and my hope is that it takes off. And my hope, this is contentious in my household, but my hope is to get back to New York and have a little farm
With a skid steer.
with a donkey, a skid steer, a horse,
Yeah.
land, all the things. Grow food that doesn't kill me. Grow beef that is good for me. Get out of the city. That's my goal. I don't know. We'll see in 4 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love what I do, which is the first.
Yeah, you're incredible at it. Matt's a painter. Has been an incredible painter. Painted Jordan Peterson's house, right? And his daughter's house.
Yeah.
Done some pretty high. Oh, and Robert Kiyosaki.
Well, yeah.
Done some pretty high-end, really high-end stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're into
Liquid metal.
painting metal with,
Yeah.
or that doesn't even sound right.
Yeah.
Liquid metal that you can paint
Yeah.
surfaces with and turn it into. I mean, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
What's your where do people find you?
Lost Dutchman Concepts. Lost Dutchman Concepts. That's the new one, and it's only for the liquid metal, and it's gonna be wild.
That's awesome. Is there one moment in the last 4 years that you look back and you're like, that was awesome, or that was relating to your sobriety that you're like, I was there for that, or that you can say that you hang your hat on, or that you
Put me on
are
the spot.
proud of yourself?
Yeah, there are,
But I'm not telling you.
but like I can't think of any. Like there's been a ton of moments. I think the best moments are the kid moments, when Wyatt will tell me something. Or I remember a friend of his, he said that his dad got super drunk and gave him $100 bill. And I was like, do you miss that? You want me to get super drunk and give you money? He's like, no. Like I think moments like that are super cool because it means that it's working,
Yeah.
But towards the end of my drinking, I was getting really angry. Got in a fight with a neighbor inside my house, like kicked him out of my house. It was like, I don't even know who that person is. But yeah, I think in the past 4 years, just seeing like my relationship with Dana get better, my relationship with my kids. Yeah, pretty much it.
Well, dude, thanks. Thanks for
thanks
hanging
having
out.
me on. It was cool.
I love hearing the story. You've always been so fun to talk to.
Right on.
You always have something to say about everything.
I'm pretty opinionated.
You're opinionated. You're well read. There's nothing I can't bring up that you're like, oh yeah, I know a little bit about this or that. And
Yeah.
those are always. You may not be an expert in all of
Anything.
it or anything, but you know something. I've always
know a little about
I
everything.
appreciated that about my dad. He always knew a little bit of something
Yeah.
about everything, and
Yeah.
that makes a great conversationalist.
Jack of all trades, master. of
Yeah.
none. Yeah.
Well, you're a pretty good master in paint. Well, I don't know, man.
No, man.
Well, put me against you painting metal, and let's see
Yeah,
who's the master.
you're awful. Yeah.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.